So hello and welcome to Dommy Tries This. I hope you brought your cuppa. Today's coffee mug, I honestly don't know where I got it from. It could have been from my husband, could have been from his mother, it could have been from any one of my kids. I am pretty sure that this is an older mug though. Not sure where it came from. It's a beautiful coffee mug though. I really love the fact that the handle is a bow. Today I am retrying the peanut butter kiss cookie from Sips By that I had trouble with when I first tried it. I did put a bit more into my tea bag. Let's give it a taste and see if it's any better than it was the first time. Here we go. Oh, okay, that's not bad. Right now my only complaint is the little Sips By bag. When you pull it closed, the top doesn't always stay closed, and I've got a whole bunch of loose tea floating around in here. But the taste is pretty good this way. Get kind of a, still not getting peanut butter, but I am kind of getting a cocoa, a chocolate, and I love chocolate teas. I have to think about that, and maybe at the end of the video I can give you an idea of more on the flavors. But it is definitely better than it was the first time. I'm getting much more flavor for it, and apparently the honey really worked. I'm not sure if using sugar will make that much different. Honey does have a different taste to it than granulated sugar, and maybe this one actually needed honey. So today is another whole and healthy Wednesday. I'm actually filming this on Monday, but yes, so that we're going to be talking about, I've actually decided to kind of talk about prior to the big weight loss that actually succeeded. Some of the things that I did then, and basically a little bit of the background of leading up to it. And as part of our Whole and Healthy Wednesdays, we do a Get Ready With Me, and we use old and new. So amongst the new from the birthday bash, I am going to try to use my Vice palette. I'm going to try to use my Nude Beach from Ipsy. I have used this once before. Unfortunately, the way I used it, I couldn't really tell if how it worked, but I think it was pretty reasonable, honestly. From the old pile, I'm going to use my Violet Voss hashtag. This is my favorite Violet Voss palette. I kind of want to dig into some of the golds in there. And from the really old, I'm going to be using my last remaining BH Cosmetics palette, this Galaxy Chick. It's got some nice colors that I'm going to think about playing with as well. I'm going to go back to a tried and true foundation, and that's my TruBlend. I'm getting light enough for it, and going to use the Bad Habit powder with it again. I'm going to start off with this Vice palette, and I'm going to grab this light pinky. This is actually a favorite color of mine to use underneath my brow. So we're going to start there and see how that does. So when I was younger, I was actually not a heavy kid. I mean, by today's standards, I probably would, which is, I think, also a problem in our culture. When I was younger, a size 12 was considered reasonable. This is actually pretty nice. Just a touch patchy, but nothing terrible. Oh, it's nice. So I was a size 12. I was actually a very active kid. We lived across from a park. And I would go out and run around in that park. And so I actually stayed fairly slender when I was younger. So in the Violet Voss palette, like I said, I want to go for some of the golds. And let's see. I'm going to start with this light gold Truth. And then I'm going to go into, What I want to do, I'm going to go into this color Living, and then I'm going to use one of the purples or the burgundies from the Galaxy Chick on the outer. So we're going to go light gold, that rosy color, it's almost an orange, but not quite, in here, and then we're going to do the burgundy on the outside. So that's the plan. I was quite active as a kid. And then my mother and my stepfather divorced, and my mother packed us all up in a car and we moved to California. I am not sure if that's when food really started to become a problem for me. But that is possibly part of that's what's been going on, I guess. Because for me, food is more than fuel. It is also comfort, which to some degree it should be. But you can take that too far, and I eventually did. I love these. I love these. I love the Violet Voss. So we moved, and then we moved around a lot in California after that. We weren't settled a lot, so it was kind of rough after that. my mother was working, and we were also on public aid quite a bit when I was younger. And the big problem with public aid is it doesn't really give you federal aid, food stamps, all that stuff. It doesn't really give you enough so that you can actually buy healthy food. One of my biggest complaints about the food industry is that processed food actually ends up being cheaper than buying real healthy food. For example, you can get boxes of macaroni and cheese with the powdered cheese shit that's not cheese. It's orange colored thickened milk is what it is. You can get those for 50 cents. To make a real mac and cheese that is actually healthy with real cheese and all the other stuff, the noodles alone will cost you $1. The cheeses will cost you a great deal more than that. The little box has noodles in it, and it's 50 cents, but you have to spend at least $1 just to get noodles to make mac and cheese. Okay, going into that color Living now. It's a beautiful color too. I'm using the same brush. It's gonna draw a little bit of that gold over, but not a lot. Anyway, so yeah, we moved a lot when I was younger. There were some other issues that I really don't want to go into. Health issues for my mother that also had negative impacts. But through most of that, I still managed to stay fairly thin, despite not having the kind of money we needed for decent food. We lived up in the mountains for a while, and I would go hiking, and I mean, there were just things that I did. I loved to dance, so I was still fairly active when I could be. Okay, so that's going to be it for my Violet Voss palette, unless I use the black for my wing. My only complaint about the Violet Voss palettes is every single one of them has to have a black in it. That's it. They are the first shadows that have really held up to my problem eyes. I love the brand. I highly recommend it. Alrighty, so I'm going to use this Luxie brush, and I'm going to take this Aphrodite color. I think that's pretty close to my... yeah, pretty close. I'm going to take this Aphrodite color and put it on the outside of my eye. But in high school is also, I think, when some other things started going on. Like I said, my mother, there were some health issues going on that I don't want to get into. And I became more aware of those in high school, especially towards the end of high school. I actually had 2 abusive boyfriends during that time. Also not going to go into that. But, you know, things started to really kind of happen in high school. That actually looks pretty close to my golden. So I may try to deepen that up with this color that I'm using is Aphrodite. I might throw in some of this Prometheus. We'll see. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side, talking to you. But I still maintained a, you know, about a size 12, which at the time was considered a fairly reasonable weight for a girl my height. I was about 5'5", and but that's also about the time when things really seemed to start changing a little bit. I have to say, BH tends to be more miss than hit for me, but their bake shadows are pretty decent. So if you like a nice shiny bake shadow, BH is cheap and it has some good ones. But the other palettes, I've decluttered everything but this one. But anyway, so I think I actually started to gain soon after that. Honestly, just not quite sure what really led up to it or why. But it wasn't a lot. But that's also about the time that I stopped being as physically active as I had been up to then. I went to college. I didn't get involved in any activities in college, but I was also going to college because it was something my mother wanted me to do. I went into a field that my mother wanted me to go to. I ended up not finishing it. I kind of worked at, I was still trying to figure myself out. And so, yeah, just a lot of things. I think just sort of the weight started to creep up. I wasn't as physically active. I was still eating piss poor food because when I was in college, I was still able to qualify for some help, as I believe. I was doing the work study program, so I wasn't getting that much money. So because I was in school and because of the way federal aid was created at the time, it did change later. I was able to, support myself, but again, it wasn't fantastic food, and it was a struggle, and I was doing the best I could. So my diet wasn't the best, and yeah, just that is the period of time, I think, when I started to see a real change in me physically. And I think a lot of it had to do with how I was eating and the fact that I was no longer being physically active. And, when you first get out of school and you're trying to figure out life, your focus isn't necessarily on staying thin or anything of that nature. And then I got married and I had kids. And I'm going to use my balm for my crease with my big e.l.f. brush that I like to do this with. But if anybody will tell you, having kids, any woman will tell you having kids adds weight. I was also just starting to have some other physical problems at the time. I had some sort of issue with my back, and the doctors couldn't figure out what the problem was. Oh, this is pretty. So I started putting on weight with the kids and between the kids. It was just a different life. That's pretty, if a bit different. During that time, I think I was still struggling a bit with the whole food thing. I had taken a nutrition class in high school. I believe I had taken another one. No, I didn't take the other one in college until later. But this was before, again, this was before some of the bullshit stuff that has come out since about food and weight loss and what you should and should not eat and all of that kind of stuff. I am going to try to go back to my vise here. Let me see, what do I want to use? Okay. It's more purpley than I want to go, but it's nice and dark. I'm going to try this Purple Palms to deepen up my crease. Let's see what that does. Excuse me. Kind of need to... Here we go. But again, I wasn't being active, and with each successive kid, I was gaining weight. My marriage, I was kind of having trouble with my marriage. My husband wasn't abusive, but his mother was. And so there was just a lot of other things starting to build in. And again, food was more of a comfort. And so I was eating more than I should. And I remember with at least my last kid, if not my second to last kid, the doctors were telling me to also try not to eat so much and try not to gain so much. With my second child, I think I was being told to try to lose a little bit at one point. I can't remember. I know there was a point when they thought losing weight when you were pregnant was okay. But it wasn't until my third and fourth kid that I was really, really in trouble with my weight. And they were trying to tell me, oh, that'll be nice. It's a nice deep color. And it actually goes with the color from the balm. Looks very pretty. Like that. So I was dealing with an abusive mother-in-law, and I don't blame my husband, my ex-husband, much, because honestly, she was a very controlling person. So I think he'd been dealing with that all of his life. But I did eventually divorce, and we ended up, there's a lot of fallout for this one. We ended up on food stamps, and again, not enough money and poor choices. I went back to college finally, and that's when I finally started getting back into trying to be healthy and active, and I started trying to lose weight like the first or second time in my life. I might have tried to lose weight earlier than that, but I don't remember much about it. I do remember when I was in college going to the weight machines and trying to lose weight and losing a little bit weight and then not losing the weight and getting very frustrated with it. I'm going to add just a little bit more of this balm on that outer corner, just a little bit. That first attempt to lose, well, that second attempt to lose weight was my first lesson in something that's very important about weight loss. And that is you have to be motivated beyond looking pretty by societal standards. And you have to be motivated by more than just wanting to be thin. Even just wanting to be healthy isn't necessarily going to be enough motivation. For me, the motivation didn't come in until I had this issue with my daughters, and I realized that I needed to be around for my son for a very long time. He became my motivation. Now, a lot of people will tell you, don't choose an outside motivation. But in this case, that outside motivation, being around as long as possible for my son, was what kept me alive, kept me going, even when weight stalled out. Because, like I said previously, I believe, when I first finally on this journey decided to lose weight, I really did need to actually lose weight. There is a point where you actually need to lose weight, and I think there's a point where once you've lost some weight and you're up and around and you're able to, you're healthier than you were or whatever it is, then you can start looking to other things, even if your weight is heavier than what society says it should be. But initially I did need to lose weight, and you will stall out. You'll lose 20 pounds and your body will go, okay, I'm done. And you will have to figure out how to jumpstart it again. But to do that, you have to be motivated enough to actually push past that barrier. When I was younger, I hit that barrier and didn't have the discipline, the motivation, or the real need or desire to push past it as much as I thought. I kept pushing for, probably a week or two, I don't remember. And then I went, whatever, and gave up. I did continue to lift weights in college for like 3 or 4 semesters. I did find that I enjoyed it, but at some point during that period, the weight wasn't coming off, and I just finally said, fine, screw it, I'm done. I actually like this. This is an unusual look, but I like it. So I'm going to use this Luxie small shader, and I think I'm going to try to mix Earth with Aphrodite to finish out the inside of the bottom of my eye. I completely forgot where I was at in the search for the next color. I'm sitting here covering it up, and I don't mean to, guys, but that's pretty. Eyes are done for now. Going to use my CoverGirl Clean Invisible Concealer in Light, and I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to straighten out my line and take care of the fallout underneath there. So I had 4 kids, and was in a marriage that was abusive, not because of the husband, but because of his mother and the issues he was having. I decided to get a divorce. I took my kids out of there. Basically decided that I was going to get myself out of that mess, get my kids out of that mess. So I went back to being in poverty. I was in school again. I was struggling again. I was on aid again. And I know a lot of people, it's off topic, but I know a lot of people think if you're on public aid, you're making out. And I can tell you right now, you're not. I was lucky to get $350, I think, at the time, maybe $300, something like that, to feed 4 people. It just, even back then, that wasn't enough money to get good and healthy food. So we were back on this whole poor food, poor nutritional content food type thing going on in my life. The biggest part of all of that was when I went back to school. To cover certain things, I wanted to get through school very, very quickly. So I was taking overload on the classes, which means for a semester system, I was taking at least 20 units, and for a quarter system, I was taking at least 16, because I went from a city college and got my associates to a 4-year college and got my bachelor's. So to do that, I also had to take buses to school. Now for the 4-year college, it was nearby, so that wasn't a big deal. But the 2-year college was another city over, and that was a big deal. So I had to get on one bus in my city, transfer to another bus in their city. It was a mess. It was a mess. And so to get through all of this as quickly as possible, I had a friend. She would stay with my kids, and she was watching my kids. So I would be there. I would leave my house at 6 in the morning and not get home until 10 o'clock at night. And let's do I want to color correct today? I think I'm going to skip the color correcting today. Although I do have some spots. Well, I guess we'll color correct them. I have some spots. So, yeah, that was kind of rough on everybody. I didn't see my kids much. She was practically raising them. But the biggest thing about it all was that I was not eating, really, until I met my current husband. I sometimes would grab something quick going out of the house, but in general, I tried to leave the food for the kids. So I wasn't eating. And when you're not eating, it's very strange. It's going to sound strange, but your body will hang on to everything you have, everything you eat, and you will gain weight again. At least for a little while. Eventually, you start to lose and you become the skeletal people that we're used to seeing in starvation. But initially, you get kind of, your body just wants everything you give it, because as far as it's concerned, you're going into starvation mode, and it's going to need all that food to keep you alive, or at least all that fat to keep you alive eventually. And so you don't lose weight. You may not gain weight, but you don't lose weight. And so that's what happened with me. I was actually gaining weight a little bit, but in general, I wasn't losing weight. So I was not eating. I was trying to leave as much of that food and stuff for my kids. And yeah, I wasn't gaining weight. I wasn't losing weight. I wasn't being healthy. Let's just go with that. But I was already pretty big by that time too. I don't remember how much I weighed. And over the years since then, I just continued to gain weight. It was disturbing to me that I was gaining weight, especially since our culture was becoming more thin-minded. But for me, there were other things that were more important. And I still wasn't being active. By that time, I was too busy to do dancing or any of the other things that I used to love to do. It just, I just kept gaining. Let's just go with that. I just kept gaining. We'll just go with that. And I just dropped stuff, so hold on. I will say that I think that one of the other things that kind of did me in on my weight is that my ex and I really wanted me to be at home with my kids. So I really wasn't getting out much. Now, that was a personal choice. I'm not upset by that choice. And then after the divorce, of course, I had to get out to go to school. But I still wasn't being active. I was riding a bus. We were living in low-income housing. We were having trouble making ends meet. And we were living in California, which is expensive. We had the opportunity to move out here. There have been issues with that move that also kicked in. Unfortunately, I think we've done better in terms of being able to afford things, because California, like I said, it's expensive. But we are still in poverty. We've never been on food stamps out here. However, we still have had to cut back on food. I know it looks like, but this does oxidize. It'll darken up a little bit. And it will fit better. My skin color better. So we've had long periods where we couldn't afford the best food. I honestly wasn't thinking about healthy food. I just wanted to get us fed. Now, I will say, before we moved out here from California, I did actually start going, I am getting too heavy. I got to do something about this. And we started trying to cut back on how much we were eating. That is actually the very first step we took. We tried to make the amount of food that we put on our plates at mealtime less. So by the time we got out here, we actually were cutting back on the amount of food. So that's a good thing. But we still weren't at that point eating much healthy food, if that makes sense. So I'm going to put another layer without the Vichy in it over. And again, but when we got out here, I actually started working too. My son was in school, so I could actually work while he was in school. We started doing what most Americans do when both people are working and not a lot of money, not a lot of time. And we started doing more convenience foods, which are high in salt and things like that. And then my son graduated and the things with my kids, and I was staying home. And somewhere along the way, I honestly don't know how it happened, because, I mean, one day I was working and I was able to get around. I mean, I had a lot of pain, had a lot of back pain in particular. My blood pressure was too high, things like that. But I was able to get around, and then I stopped working. Somehow I went from in pain but getting around to not getting around. And I honestly don't remember what that transition was. So finally decided that I had to get on my feet for my son. So you have to find that motivation. I had all the knowledge. I really did. I had all the knowledge. I wasn't using it. I wasn't using it because I wasn't invested in any way. You have to be invested. I just wanted to talk about that background of, you can have education, you can have the knowledge and still gain too much weight because you're not being active even though you know you should be. You're not eating right even though you know you should be. And your life is so, whatever it is, so overwhelming, or your background is kicking in ways that make food your primary source of comfort or whatever. Those things can overcome what you know. You can end up gaining weight anyway. No one ever actually goes through life intending to gain weight. It happens. And in some ways it sneaks up on you. You going along, and then one day you realize your pants aren't fitting right. So you go out and buy new clothes. Maybe you're only a size up, so you think, it's okay, it's fine. But each time you have to go another size up, each time you have to buy a new set of clothes because the old ones don't fit. I mean, it builds, and you don't think about it. It like I said, it happens. It just happens. It has to come to a point where it hits you that it's more than just society telling you to lose weight or to become healthy for you to decide to do that. I think that's what I'm trying to get to. That I had all this education, I had all this knowledge, but I also had all this background that was overriding it. I had all these circumstances in my life that was overriding what I knew, and I gained all this weight despite what I knew. And then one day I woke up and went, I can barely get out of bed. I can barely push a shopping cart without having to lean on it. I can barely do the dishes without being in agonizing pain. And even those things weren't the things that finally got me to do something. For a lot of people, those would do it. They didn't do it for me. So you have to find the right motivation, because you will eventually bump up against a wall. And to keep going, you have to have that motivation in mind. I'm going to finish my face and be right back. So here is our finished look. I hope you like it. I continue the old and new theme for most of the rest of the makeup. Use the TruBlend as I noted. This was old. And then for new, I used the Bad Habit powder. For my bronzer, I used my Zuri Flawless foundation. For my contour, don't actually have anything new for that. But for my blush, I mixed this old Laura Geller, not that old, but it's older, that I got in a BoxyCharm with the Ofra in Melon that was sent to me. For my highlighter, I went with an old favorite, my Angel Food, and I mixed that with, give me a minute, with this color from the Vanessa's Vanity. Love this as a highlighter. It does not give a lot of shine. I mean, it gives some shine, obviously. It gives a nice subtle glow that I really, really like. I love the color. This one gave it a much brighter shine over there. For the lips, for the new, I went with this NYX Butter in Ripe Berry. And then I paired it with the old e.l.f. oil in Berry Kiss. This is a favorite of mine. And I paired it with an old Sephora lip liner. I think this is in like dark ruby or something. So there's our look. I hope you like it. We will be getting further into the decisions and how the early part of my journey went versus where I am now and things like that. I just think it's kind of important. A lot of people will be like, it doesn't matter. The past doesn't matter. Move on. You're where you're at now. Just move on. Figure out you're going to lose weight and do it. The thing is your past impacts how you treat food and how you treat yourself. How important it is to you to be healthy. Things like that. Abuse and, stress, poor eating habits, all of those things. How many times you've tried to lose weight. All of those things will affect repairing your body, becoming healthier in your body. The next time you try to lose weight or you try to do the things you need to do to be a healthier you. So honestly, the past is important because you are going to have to face those things when you're losing weight. Or as I'm doing, changing your body shape and image. They affect how you feel about yourself. You cannot go to trying to lose weight from a space of hating yourself, unfortunately. If hate worked, then shaming would work. And we all know fat shaming just doesn't work. People don't lose weight when they are shamed. They just don't. So you got to face those things eventually. You've got to figure out where a lot of this stuff comes from and face up to it and figure out a way through it for your health journey to be successful. Anyway, I hope you like what you've seen, and if you're not subscribed, well, why not? Never mind. You probably have your reasons, and that's just fine. I'm hurt, but it's fine. But hopefully you've liked it enough to subscribe now, maybe? You think? And if you do subscribe, please hit the notification bell so you know when I upload next. If you are part of the notification squad, yes, indeed, must remind you again, we are getting knocked off our notifications, so you want to make sure to check your bell. If you don't subscribe, I'll be sad. But I still hope you'll come back again. And when you do come back again, don't forget to bring your cup of tea. Okay, I like it now. And it's good cold, because this has gotten very cold. This is actually very good cold. I can definitely live with that. That's really, really good. I hope you all have a good day, and